The toilet rat continues his scorching march across the Constitution. Now, 2 days ago on Wednesday, he asked the Supreme Court to get rid of 3 Democratic members of the Consumer Product Safety Administration Commission. They were fired by the toilet rat and then reinstated by a federal judge. So the toilet rat is going to Daddy. That would be John Roberts. Daddy, make them go away. Now, the toilet rat does have the power to fire independent agency board members. That's what the Justice Department argues in its filing to the High Court. And to bolster that claim, they point to a ruling in May by the Supreme Court, that a ruling that endorsed a whole goddamn bunch of presidential power moves. And the fascist Supreme Court, not the 3 progressives, not the 3 women who are logical, sensible, rational jurists. I'm not talking about them, of course. The other 6, the 6 Catholic fucking Christian fascist demons, the ones who are charged with destroying the republic and are doing a jam-up job so far, aren't they? Let's get a round of applause for those 6 fascists on the Supreme Court. Yay! Way to go, you bastards. Stop it. Oh, okay. So the toilet rat is asking the Supreme Court for an immediate order to allow the firings to go forward. And that, of course, is over the objections of the attorneys who are representing these 3 Democrats, these 3 bureaucrats who were on the Consumer Product Safety Commission and now fired. Now, what does the CPSC do? Well, it was put together, if you remember, back in the mid-'70s and advocated for by, what's her name? The senator from Massachusetts. Oh, Malloy, another brain fart. Anyway, what the commission does, it helps protect us, consumers, from dangerous products. And one of the ways it does that is by testing, checking everything they can, and then issuing recalls. And if that doesn't work, they sue the companies that refuse to clean up their fucking act. And, of course, the CPSC does more than that, obviously. But anyway, the toilet rat fired the 3 Democrats on the 5-member commission in May. And they were serving 7-year terms after being nominated by Joe Biden and approved. I guess they needed Senate confirmation, which they got. A district judge in Baltimore, Matthew Maddox, ruled in June that the dismissals were unlawful. And Judge Maddox sought to distinguish the commission's role, the Consumer Product Safety Commission's role, from those of other agencies where the Supreme Court has allowed firings to go forward. Fucking Supreme Court. Aren't they wonderful? Can we get a round? Oh, we just had a round of applause. All right. So a month earlier, back in May, the fascist Christians on the Supreme Court declined to reinstate members of the National Labor Relations Board, and they declined to reinstate members of the Merit System Protection Board. And the 6 fascist members of the Supreme Court, Christians all, found that the Constitution appears to give the toilet rat the authority to fire the board members, quote, without cause, end quote. In other words, the toilet rat can fire any fucking body he wants to if he feels like it. All he has to do is say to Lee Zeldin or some of these other little Nazi trolls that work for him, fire him. Now, of course, the 3 liberal justices dissented from all of this bullshit. The toilet rat's lawyers had argued that all agencies are under the toilet rat's control because he is the head of the executive branch. So, in other words, fuck you. You'll do what I say or I will fire you. It's very simple. I'll just fire your ass. Now, the judge, Matthew Maddox, noted that it can be difficult to characterize the Product Safety Commission's function as being purely executive. Well, the nuance is going to be totally lost, not only on the toilet rat and his minions, but also on the 6 devils on the U.S. Supreme Court, the Christian devils on the Supreme Court. So anyway, this fight, and it's ongoing. The toilet rat is determined. You know, he was subject to so much humiliation and embarrassment because of his own corrupt, filthy, goddamn criminal activities over years. He finally, stepped on his own penis and wound up in court and had to sit there in his own farts while the jury listened to the charges and then found him guilty of 34 felonies, right? So as a result of that, Trump is obviously, the toilet rat obviously is on a warpath to destroy as much of the American judicial system and the criminal justice system as he possibly can. People convicted of trying to overthrow the government, pardon them. People convicted of fraud and deceit and theft, pardon them. People, who's next? People convicted of murder? Well, you could argue that the 1,600 that he pardoned after the attack on the U.S. Capitol were collectively guilty of causing the deaths of 6 or 7 people. So the toilet rat is just determined to destroy everything he can get his tiny little hands on because, as he said during his campaign, he is on a revenge tour. Only the revenge is against the criminal justice system, the Constitution of the United States, and the people of this country, including the dumb fuckheads who voted him back into office. Well, I digress. Anyway, the fight over the toilet rat's power to fire people is probably, not probably, is most assuredly prompting this fascist court, 6 members of the fascist court, to consider overturning a Supreme Court decision that has been in place for 90 years. It's from 1935, and it was a case known as Humphrey's Executor. Now, I have no fucking idea what that is, but I'm learning so much, or I'm reading about so much. I'm not learning it, but I'm reading about so much because of the activities and the unlawful behavior of this fucking bum who sits as president. But in that case, the court unanimously held that presidents cannot fire independent board members without cause. There has to be a reason. It could be moral turpitude. It could be violating the law. But there was nothing in the 1935 decision that said, well, unless the President of the United States doesn't like them. So that decision from all those years ago, according to the Associated Press, that ushered in a period of powerful independent federal agencies who were charged with regulating labor relations, regulating or overseeing and trying to eliminate employment discrimination, having jurisdiction over the nation's airwaves, all sorts of things. Independent boards that were usually comprised of responsible people, Democrat and Republican, back in the day before the Republican Party was eaten alive by these Christian slime. And the regulatory boards took care of most of the day-to-day business of running the republic. This is what the dumpster dweller, Steve Bannon, and some of his ilk have referred to as the deep state. Ooh, run, hide, get the kids and the old ladies off the street. The deep state is coming. No, the deep state is leaving. Anyway, these fascists in this country have ever since that ruling 90 years ago, they didn't like it, according to what I've read. They argued that the modern administrative state, which is what we're living in now, and apparently living in right after that decision by the Supreme Court 90 years ago, that the modern administrative state gets the Constitution all wrong because these agencies should answer to the executive. They must. Well, the Supreme Court 90 years ago said, no, they mustn't. They're independent, which protects them from political bullshit. Well, that's about to end because the Supreme Court is going to hear the argument that will overturn that 90-year-old decision called Humphrey's Executor. I have no idea what the case was about. Anyway, the Consumer Product Safety Commission was created, in 1972, and its 5 members must maintain a partisan split with no more than 3 representing the president's party. That's why the 3 of them that were removed were all appointed by Biden, okay? And they serve staggered terms. They're each assigned for 7 years, but not all at the same time. And that structure, of course, is a good idea. That ensures that each president has the opportunity to influence, but not control, the commission. And that's what the attorneys for the fired commissioners wrote in these filings that are now before the Supreme Court. They argued that recent terminations by the toilet rat could and would jeopardize the commission's independence. But that is the goal. That is the objective. Of course, destroy. Nothing can be independent of this senile, rancid, bloated fucking Donald Trump. Nothing can be outside of his little hand grasp. And that's what he is trying to impress upon the people of this country, that he, goddamn you, I am in charge. I make decisions, not you, not the Congress, not the courts, nobody but me. Well, yeah, and he's doing quite a good job of asserting that dictatorial power, isn't he? Because there's nobody, no organization, no thing, nothing that seems able to stop this son of a bitch. Well, we know what would stop him. We've gone through it twice in this country. The French went through it. Most countries go through it. And it's usually bloody, and it causes a lot of people to die and a lot of heartbreak and so on and so forth. But if this shit keeps up, I think it goes without saying that the American people at some point, well, maybe not, but at a different time, the American people would have risen like a sleeping giant and smashed into a million fucking pieces any kind of a government that tried to destroy what this country was founded upon. Not that we have lived up to the pronouncements in the U.S. Constitution, but we were trying. I think we were trying. I hope we were trying. And we were making progress. Well, that progress has to be absolutely, unequivocally destroyed. And the dictatorial little prick, Donald Jesus Christ Trump, has got to prevail, according to him.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.